each country, especially in the Gulf, is different. They have completely different cultures. This is what the West does not understand.
Hi, Gianluca.
Hey.
How are you doing?
All good. You?
Good. It's been a busy week.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, it has. Welcome to Slow Days Fast Company.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm really excited for our chat today because I feel like a lot of people are talking about Middle East cinema these days, and the film scene is maturing, and we're telling edgier stories, and I think there's no better person to talk about what the current landscape looks like than you.
Thank you.
CEO and founder of Front Row Filmed Entertainment.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you do and also about why we're at Cinema Akil today.
So I am a film distributor. That's how I start. Been here 22 years. And also started producing, so kind of a producer.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at Cinema Akil because it's just so personal. We grew up together. Let me put it that way. And with it, it feels, it's my place. It's the right place, especially with the stuff that we distribute. And I think it's probably one of the coolest spots in Dubai, quite frankly.
So as someone who's grown up in the business, and obviously you're a cinephile, everybody knows about it, you're, changing the pace of what movies in the Middle East look like today.
Well,
how do you think growing up with movies led you down this path?
It was my father. He was a film distributor, grew up with that. I got to watch twice as many films as anybody would watch. But I just grew up with it, loved it. And then with that, came, my father was also very passionate about what he did. And he'd bet on a film, and then sometimes it would do great, and he was right. And then sometimes it would just, completely flop. But it's part of the business, And I grew up with that kind of fascination. He'd come from the various film festivals with, at the time there were VHS tapes. I'm old. So, I would get to watch trailers of stuff that he bought or should have bought.
Uh-huh.
And I would tell him, it's like, why didn't you get this one or that one? And he would explain. And I just always wanted to know what he did. And then growing up, he, midlife crisis, divorce, something, his company went bust. But I still, loved what he did. I worked with one of his competitors. But I learned a lot, I have to say. And then at some point I kind of understood what I wanted with a lot of arrogance. I'm like, I can do this, and literally started from scratch. And and this place gave me an opportunity probably that nowhere else I would have had, I think. But with that came a lot of arrogance, maybe because I didn't know what I was going into. And got slapped many times. It just, you learn a lot. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And here I am.
So if we had to backtrack to probably your father's generation, how do you think film distribution has changed? Do you think there's been a significant change in the kinds of movies that people want to watch here in the region?
Two things. I mean, that generation distributed your B action films, and it was all about the poster and chicks with guns, it was that generation. It changed a lot. Obviously tastes change, they become more elaborate. Technology changes, obviously. But also the environment changed, like the business environment. Over here, the Middle East, they're so competitive. Like you would see, it was like, a scene of The Godfather, because you had literally 5 families that would control the business, and at the time Lebanon was, I'm half Lebanese. Lebanon was the number one territory, with the biggest at the time. The Gulf literally was still kind of a desert, waiting to be discovered, but at the time it was just the Levant that really made a lot of business, in Egypt. But like in everywhere in the Middle East, they used to hate each other. They would never collaborate. You know, it would be like play nice over dinner, but then after that, uh, it was ruthless. You know, I think the new generation now, there's a lot of collaboration. I think it's great, and it's so healthy.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, like I faced that generation, so I was like, you know, the up and coming guy that it's like, this guy needs to be destroyed, kind of thing, you know. And then like with the right strategic partnerships, and I partnered up with the Kuwait National Cinema Company, but mainly like with a guy which is, I believe, my mentor, Hisham Al Ghanim. You know, like he made me understand a lot of how, you know, the politics, even the mannerism work here in the Middle East. Because, you know, a lot of the times I'm like, you know, why did this happen, or why did that guy, you know, and then he would explain. But also he made me understand that, you know, you gotta also be very strategic, you know, and this is an Arab thing, you know, which I've learned a lot. And yeah, it's made me grow a lot as a person here, honestly, especially understanding a new culture. And you with that and being half Arab, um, well, I think I also used that as an advantage. You know, I was, and I got a lot of things done because I was considered the foreigner. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, like I know how Arabs think. I'm also Arab, and that gave me an edge, I think, and still does.
Mm-hmm.
And even with now on the production side, I think it's needed, you know. So fine, I'll use it to my advantage, you know.
You spoke about how there's a certain preconceived notion about the foreigner versus somebody who
Yeah.
is an Arab, and
Yeah,
how
an
they're.
Arab needs to prove himself a lot more. I
Uh-huh.
see that, especially depending on where. Like, come on, man, it's like you have to have merit.
So, for instance, say somebody had to start from scratch, get into the film distribution business, get into production even in the region,
Yeah.
and maybe they were starting from
Scratch.
starting from scratch.
Oof.
There's no influence whatsoever. You
I mean,
came from
it's
family
hard.
backing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You see, I kind of knew the players,
Mm-hmm.
but if I didn't know about them, well, if I didn't meet them, I knew about them. So I started with that advantage, you know, and
But say you're a rookie.
right. Oof. Yeah, you'd
How do
have
you
to. I think you'd
navigate
have to
that? Yeah.
again. Like I believe in consolidation. I believe in partnerships. I think like-minded people should work together and not force it. A lot of it is forced. But that's why that's the only way of getting into the game, because otherwise it's suicide.
Mhm.
Really, it's so competitive. It's so political.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. You know. That's why I tell you, like I got slapped a lot. I learned all of this, you know, but and again, surrounded by great people, so made it through. And still, like, it's not easy, you
So
know.
when you talk about collaboration, for
Yeah.
instance, and you did reference the fact that in your father's generation, people were very territorial,
Absolutely.
and there wasn't enough collaboration or even recognition of the other. But
Sure.
now things are changing.
Yeah.
So how does that collaboration materialize without probably losing your presence in the market, but still forging some kind of.
You don't. You. If you're strong in something, I think like you'll always stand out.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that.
What's front row strength?
I think innovation, and not the way the company grew unknowingly. It's not that I had the plan.
Mhm.
I had no plan.
Yeah.
It was more about, I'm going to prove you wrong, and this is going to work, and then I want to open a bar. That was that was my life plan. But then I saw that there was an opportunity, you know, and yeah, kind of like the underdog story that everybody went, "Yay, you made it," kind of thing. Yeah, so I kind of feel that,
Uh-huh.
just because I didn't play their game
Uh-huh.
unknowingly. I couldn't
Right.
afford it. A, and B, it's like because you couldn't afford it, and because I probably had I was lucky to get slapped really early by competition,
Mm-hmm.
like really hard, to model my business without them.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that. You know, I'm like, listen, like this guy's never gonna help me, you know, and he's like controlling, you know, the Middle East, and you're like, I'll go that way, you know, and slowly realized that Nobody went that way. It was just me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it kind of grew. Carved a niche, then a bigger niche, uh, and then unknowingly I built a name, a reputation, which years later I found out. I was like, well, people listen, you know, and it's literally it was like that. But then slowly, I understood that I couldn't do it alone. It started becoming bigger and bigger, um, and luckily then I got a great team. Like I'm lucky enough and eternally grateful to have like a kick-ass team. Like, you know, slowly but surely we built something with all my insecurities on the contrary, like they pushed me to do so. Um, and I did, and it grew a lot since then. And we're still expanding, but it's all very organic. It's like you gotta love what you do and the people you're with, and I'm seeing that a lot. And like that is a lot of collaborations that, you know, in the past or my dad's generation would never happen. Now it's like, guys, what the hell, you know, let's collab, let's make this bigger, you know, and again, the right people, you know, sometimes you'll screw up and bet on the wrong guys, and it has happened. Uh, but most of the time it's like, yeah, I'm with good guys, and together, like we work a lot. We produced our first film together,
Mm-hmm.
which like in the past, like their competitors would never work together, and to try to do that, I got to mark my territory kind of thing.
Was this with Empire Entertainment?
Yeah, so it's with my really good friend, brother Mario, and then with Mohammed Hafzi Film Clinic. So you know, we with Mario and I always wanted to work together, and we're like, listen, let's start with production, and we did. And with
And what
Hafzi
was it
from-
like navigating that, you know, transition of sorts? Because
Yeah,
I'm assuming film distribution is vastly different from
yeah.
production.
I mean, it's once you get your model right when it comes to film distribution, you know how to channel all the acquisitions that you make, and strike obviously the right partnerships and so on. You kind of get that covered,
Mhm.
and then it really depends on you know type of film and but effectively you're not working on the film, right? You acquired this film that you helped finance. Basically, it's an independent film that they sell territories, and that's how they finance these
Mhm.
independent films. But you're not developing it. You're not doing anything. It's just you're acquiring the rights, and if you have good taste, then great. When it comes to production, it's like pulling teeth. Like it's war. You know, you really have to build a team from, you know, a development stage, so the script, to the whole process of it.
And how
then
involved
once-
are you, say, as a producer in the
Very.
entire?
That's why we're so slow. Yeah, I mean, like, look, I see that there is a business. Obviously, you know, it's like the film business over here for most part is a business. Like, it's not.
I would
I don't
assume
see a
so,
lot.
of
Yeah,
course.
but I don't see a lot of love, like especially from Egypt, which was the great. You know, like they've been around for 100 years. You know, they've had great filmmakers, and now it's just turned into like a business. You know, and you're like, and that's kind of losing that edge. What's really cool is that lately. You know, there's a pot of new talent, but it's like, listen, like we want to do this, we want to try to change the whole system because it's always the same people working, and literally, like when it comes to actors, you have like a 50-year-old that's playing a 30-year-old. Why can't I have a 30-year-old? You know, like why if I want to make a teenage or a YA film or something related, we have no stars,
Right.
none of that. You know, just because. You know, that same model has been kind of like, yeah, listen, it's working. Let's keep doing the same thing. Yeah, we want to beat that. It's like, all right, fine. Like, we'll use you guys as a base. That's great, you know, but you want to grow your audience, and that's not going to grow it.
And do you think you're
Um,
getting this?
But with the right partnerships, as I said, and like-minded people, like we have that mission, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Like, honestly, it is, but it's hard.
What do you think the Middle East audience is telling you in terms of the stories that they want to be watching?
That they don't want to be dumbed down. They're sick and tired of that. You know, and a lot of the people that kind of, especially when it comes to TV, also theatrical, because like once you decide to get in a film, you need to try to position like who's your partner when it comes to TV or SVOD. So like, you know, the streamers, and you got to kind of model it for the film to make sense and for the right budget. And then obviously, yes, there's also that element of risk, which comes with a theatrical release, right? So you got to take all that into consideration. So it's easier to do the version of last year that was a success, and it's like, well, that's the business, than trying to push just a bit the boundaries. It's like, guys, we can make it better, just, and I think we're there, it's just that it needs more players like us, and I think slowly it's shaping up to be that way, and again, if you want to travel, you got to be competitive, even with how you develop a film or even how the way you want to produce it, and it's that. It takes a lot of time, a lot, but once it's done, it's worth it,
When you're talking to streamers, for instance, when you're talking to Netflix,
right?
What is that conversation like when you have to probably understand where they're coming from, which is often a very set notion that the West has about the Middle East?
Right.
How are you probably challenging that and maybe even breaking down certain barriers that have existed just historically,
Right.
or even some barriers that have maybe come up due to the rise of social media? Because now there's a certain image of the Middle East, especially the GCC. We've got
Right.
sensational TV shows like Dubai Bling that
Right.
give you a certain insight into what life is like over here, but that's really only one side of the
Not
story.
really. Yeah.
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 That's not the majority.
Right.
And then when you speak to streamers
Yeah.
or studios and they say, no, we know that model has worked.
Okay. So
We want to recreate that. How do you challenge that with an innovative new script?
no, I think like the Dubai Bling knows what it is. So respect. Like it's not that, it's that show.
Mm-hmm.
It offers an image, well, the extreme image of the Gulf or the Middle East that, we're portrayed as like, your National Geographic, covered woman on the camel or wars. Like it's that cliche. Dubai Bling is the complete opposite. So I'm
Yeah.
like, there you go, guys. Like, yeah, that's not, we also have that, by the way. And I think it's constructive in a very extreme way. Whatever you want to say about the show, I
But
salute
then there's
to that show. 'Cause-
opulence and then there's destruction. How do we find some middle ground that represents the majority of the
Well,
population?
okay, but the Middle East, like in terms for a streamer to sort of green light a film, is you have to see how appealing this film is to certain markets, but at the same time, they have to also know where their biggest markets are. So the Middle East is very fragmented. So you have the US that looks as the Middle East as Arabia, and you're like, guys, yeah, no, it's not that. Like each country, especially in the Gulf, is different. They have completely different cultures. This is what the West does not understand,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing with the Levant, you have Lebanon, which is one thing, and very westernized or Europeanized, but then you have the extreme, which is like Syria and Jordan, it's a completely different culture. So you got to play that game when you decide what show or what film you want to make, whatever content, you have to know where your target is. So the easy way out right now, just because of the subscriber base, is Saudi. So it's well, we need Saudi content. You're like, great, but that's a market that's still kind of growing. It hasn't matured. They just started making film, whereas online, these guys are masters. That's how they grew up. They've discovered the digital world earlier than anybody else. So
Mhm.
if I have to think of someone that's like, he knows how to target that audience, it's the Saudis. They
Mhm.
just know, Telfaz, I salute to them. They're great. They know their audience inside out, which is priceless. I believe that, so like when they talk, I listen,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be the randomest stuff that you would have never thought of,
Uh-huh.
but they follow this stuff.
What's one random thing?
Well, they had a massive success, which we distributed, which if you had pitched it to anyone outside of Saudi, they would have laughed at you, which was an underground wrestling film in Saudi with Saudis. So think Nacho Libre, underground Saudi.
Uh-huh.
And you're like, that's never going to work. Like, are you kidding? And I was so wrong. It was the biggest film. Like, it was as big as Top Gun, So you're like, these guys know their stuff. Like, I could never, But if you go to a global streamer,
Uh-huh.
they're like, yeah, no. Like, are you kidding? Like, that's not. So they need to understand. I mean, it's getting there slowly, but you need to understand what your market is and then try to enlarge it, and not, I want to just do Saudi films and then I just want to do Lebanese film. You just like, you're not expanding it. You're just confining it. Whereas you need more co-productions, you know, and you need to discover each other's culture to make it down the line a big, you know, a massive market, you know. And then you start targeting. Obviously, like you'll always have your, you know, the stuff that's being done right now. That's your base again, you know. But you want to grow your audience, you have to start looking at co-productions and stuff that's organic, you know, and also real. You know, I understand there's a censorship problem, but look at how Iran does it. They're masters at that. And people appreciate them for that. They know exactly what they're doing to a point where, I mean, they have the best filmmakers, really. Like, you know, they're you know, the Farhadis. These guys are masters, you know, of their work, and they have like worldwide recognition because they know how to navigate that, you know, and they've been doing it forever, which I think is beyond admirable. And we have the same thing over here, only that over here, like things are changing, you know, you have different regions that are opening up. Just 6-7 years ago, a woman couldn't drive in Saudi, and now look at that, you know.
Yeah.
And they have cinemas, and you know they have a mission to show what their culture is about, you know. And it doesn't mean that if you're from the West, you're better. It does not work that way, you know. Again, living here, I understand that you can't change things. You could give your opinion, absolutely, but don't think you're better than them because you could. They don't want to be like you. Or, you know, like you have to accept that, you know. And at the same time, that's my advantage of being a half-bred, you know. It's that, and with film, it's exactly the same thing, you know. You that's why we did Perfect Strangers. We had the Egyptian element, which I think was organic and essential to also the film's success. But by choosing that story, to me, it was great because I got to introduce Lebanese talent that some knew, obviously, in Egypt, but not the masses, you know. Whereas on the other side, doesn't have a problem, just like Egypt, like it's the Hollywood of the Middle East. But it was cool, you know. It was cool, and a lot of the guys that worked on that film then started working with Egyptians. They did TV shows, and you know, and that's how you start slowly blending the cultures. And down the line, like we're looking at stuff in Saudi to also do with Egypt. Another one, Saudi and Lebanon. So that's what we love doing, but at the same time, kind of push the envelope.
But if I remember correctly, Perfect Strangers was based on the original, which was in Italian.
Yes.
And I think it was in one of your earlier interviews where you said you had watched it in Italy.
Yeah.
And you came out of the cinema and there were just couples that were going at each other.
Absolutely.
Because it was
it's so
story.
Relatable.
Yeah,
Everybody
it was a story
lies.
so raw. And it was something that resonated with all of us. It was the fact that our relationships are complicated.
Absolutely.
And technology plays a greater role than we
And everybody lies. Everybody has something to hide.
Yeah.
So
how do we bring that story, something that's so universal? And I'm sure it's a story that's...
It's universal. It was easier. It was easier because it's so universal. And that's one of the main reason why we chose that film. You know, I'm like, I got obsessed with it. I'm like, guys, it's a format that everybody can relate to. You know, like how many times it happens. It's like, and this is your worst nightmare. Like literally, you know, you pray not to play this game. You know, and whatever culture you want to think of, everybody lies. So yeah, it was universal. But just seeing that reaction. At the time I was single, but I mean, you know, and I came out of a really bad marriage, so I'm like, yeah, I love it. There shouldn't be any couples ever, you know. But I just saw I could completely relate to that, and and then I started calling up Mario, and then we called up Hubsy together, and it's like, guys, let's do this. Like, this is genius. But then, like, you know, when you develop it, the Middle East has double standards. You know, so the Italian one, which won a prize at the Cairo Film Festival, that was accepted, and everybody praised it, and that was great. Same exact version comes out in Arabic. Oh my God, this is like, you're ruining our culture, or you're corrupting our. Like the Italian one was but that, you know, like right now it's just too close to home. But I thought that was constructive because again, you had equally the liberals that fought that, including like the union of talent or actors or in Egypt, and when they fought for the film and the star that basically got crucified, for something completely meaningless.
But didn't it receive a lot of audience applause and support?
Yeah. It was
It was well received.
It was completely well received. Yeah, but because it was different, It just had elements that nobody's seen like before, and you kind of normalize that. Yeah, and plus, like you were touching on the infidelity factor. It's like, ooh, like Arabs don't cheat or don't lie or don't curse, But I think it was healthy.
But did it open the floor for like some kind of debate, or was it immediately shut down?
There was a lot of debate. There was a lot of debate around it,
Did that cultivate probably stories that were similar, probably more raw in nature from the region?
Well, no, because there was a wave. Okay, so when that came out, we started receiving scripts. Oh, please read this. It's controversial. I'm like, that's not why we did it. Like, fine. Okay, you want to push the envelope, but it's not what we go for. So just, So the first reaction was that. But because of the success of the film, you thought, let's say it's going to open all doors. It didn't. I mean, it did, but also it didn't, because you're seen now as the troublemaker, and not like, oh, great, now we can do, we can go this far. Instead of seeing it constructively, it's more like, you got lucky, but you're a troublemaker. Nice job, but be careful. It's like It's like you're also fighting that image, which I don't mind. It's fine. But yeah, it's just the hard part is still like whatever you do is still trying to make things differently, and not follow, whatever has been set.
Open or close any doors for you when it came to acquiring other films that you probably really resonated with?
I mean, yeah, because like you're like, okay, these guys did a good job. So yeah, we have an easier access now. But when it comes to the Middle East, it's always a bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, again, like, okay, you got to respect the different cultures around, absolutely. But you also got to keep an open mind, like this film is not it was not it wasn't improvised. Like we knew this was going to be a success, I'm a distributor by nature. Like that's a winning bet, It's no coincidence that it's been done, 30 times or so. And like that with other films, I know my region. But the second one that we did was a lot harder film. Obviously, a lot deeper as a film. But
this is Sandcastles.
Yeah, that was a great experience. Honestly, I think we found a great filmmaker, which is Matty Brown, and also great DP like that photography. I think it's not because we're behind it, but visually, I think it's like the most striking Arab film made. Like honestly, I'm proud of that. And the story is quite deep. The genre, the way we mixed it, I'm proud of that film. Could have been better, but I'm proud of that film. I just think me as a company or as a person, but also, like we got to build on that. And it's not because I did it. But we got to have different filmmakers around. And even if we have to collaborate with the West or whoever, I want to bring up more original stories and not formulaic ones. They're all waiting to be discovered, but it's about really breaking that mold, and I think that's what we're about. That's why I do it. That's what drives me.
You spoke about knowing a bat when you see it.
Yeah.
And since it's in your nature and it is your job,
I'm a distributor. Like that's my first instinct, right?
Exactly.
Right.
But what happens in the off chance that you bet on something and it flops?
No, it happens.
It doesn't do as well in the region, and maybe probably from a commercial standpoint, but also maybe from an audience and reception standpoint. Maybe it's not a story that resonates, but you felt very strongly towards it.
Yeah,
what do you do in that case?
It's the nature of the business. You can't win them all. You try to. So far, so good. But again, I've lost like quite a few battles, too. The latest being a film which we bet on, and I still think it's a great film. I think it's a masterpiece, which was the Robbie Williams film called Better Man. I honestly would put it really up high when it comes to biopics. It just didn't resonate anywhere, and you watch it and you're like, you kind of had a fear when we read the script, but it was such a great script. But then there were factors in the film where you're like, I don't know, but it was so good that you're like, I'll go for it. Let's do this, you know. And we did everything right for the film. Honestly, we had great collaborations. Robbie Williams came here, opened the film. It just didn't resonate at all, you know. But everyone that sees it is like, it's great, but nobody went and saw it. But when they do, you're like, oh, but why did it fail? I'm like, for people like you, man, you just didn't go and watch it. But then there are other films that you bet on, even small ones. I remember we bet on a film during COVID. We had read the script and we're like, this is such a cool concept. No stars, no nothing, which was Talk to Me. And then Talk to Me just became like one of the biggest horrors of that year.
Mm-hmm.
It's massive. It was an original film done by YouTubers. Great company like A24, you know, got to distribute that in the US. And we were involved like literally for 3 years before it was even made. And it was like, these are like the kind of successes that drive you. And you're like, you know, I don't need the big film. It's those, you know, and that's, yeah, you get a lot of those. Well, no, not a lot, but every once in a while, you know, when they come along, it's awesome. And yeah, we usually bet on those. Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to probably look into the future,
yeah,
what do you think is the pulse of the region, say in the next 5 years, in terms of the stories that audiences are really leaning towards? What do you think we want to talk about as the Middle East? Not what the West wants us to look like, not what the image that we would like to portray, but more so, what are the stories that resonate with people like you and I who live here?
Look, in the past, there was this kind of, not fear, but kind of like embarrassment almost of saying you were from the Middle East, you know. And wars, whatever, all that, the racism factor. Now it's different. It's changed a lot. It's modernized a lot. I mean, look at here. It's opening up. Saudi's becoming is a main world player now, which by default makes the, you know, Middle East also like relevant, right? It's that. I just see that people need to be real. There's going to be stories from the Middle East. There's a sense of discovery. And you see also that with talent that are in the West, that no longer like, you know, there's this thing where it's like, oh, I got out of the Middle East. Now I'm in Europe. Look, I'm a cool artist in Berlin. Ooh, I got called from LA and like got to go. No, now it's like working the other way around. It's like you have, you know what? I don't want to go to the US. I'm going to come to the Middle East and really appropriate my heritage and to make something about it because it's such a new thing. You know, you don't have that. You had just, you know, I would call them folkloristic. It was the same genre type of music, but now it's like you have different genres. And because like music is so mainstream because of streaming now, there's space for everything and everyone, you know, and it's a market really that needs to be built and refined. But it's there. I see it. I'm really beyond positive.
I think that's a great way to bring this conversation to a close because,
yeah.
You know, considering that the Middle East is prepared to tell stories that humanize us as people that live here, people that are born and bred. I think you're definitely one of the trailblazers that are willing to bet on the Middle East story and to champion stories that show all of us in all our technicolor.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Gianluca, for having this conversation with me. It's been lovely speaking to you.
Same here. Thank you.